Welcome to the 700 Club. Tensions are building all over the world. We've got the possibility of a regime change, which is needed in North Korea as they launch a missile capable of hitting as far as Denver and Los Angeles. We also have the Russians throwing out 755 American diplomats because of sanctions being placed upon them by the United States Congress. It looks like we're going to be in for a very hot fall, and it won't be pleasant. We've got enemies on every side. But at the White House, the first day on the job for President Trump's new chief of staff, Reince Priebus out, retired four-star General John Kelly in. He's been serving as the head of the Department of Homeland Security. Now he takes over to drain another swamp. And can he stop the leaks?
Well, with all of that happening, Kelly takes over as the administration is facing, as Pat mentioned, a deadlier nuclear threat from North Korea. And the president's trying to get the Senate to come up with a new health care plan. Jenna Browder brings us the story from Washington.
It's a new chapter inside the White House as General John Kelly gets ready to become President Trump's new chief of staff. But with this new chapter comes a host of challenges, beginning with growing tensions overseas. Congress has passed new sanctions on Russia, and the White House says the president will sign them. Vladimir Putin retaliating over the weekend with the expulsion of 755 U.S. diplomats, the largest forced reduction for the U.S. in Moscow in more than 100 years. That comes amid growing tension with North Korea. Kim Jong-un launched his second intercontinental ballistic missile this month, saying his arsenal has the power to strike the United States mainland.
This is here. They've been barking wolf about this. Well, the wolf is at the door. This is a very real threat to the United States.
In response, a show of force from U.S. warplanes as they flew over the Korean peninsula. And President Trump is pointing the finger at China, tweeting, "They do nothing for us with North Korea. We will no longer allow this to continue." The president wants China, which has more direct influence on the regime than any other country, to apply more diplomatic pressure. Back at the White House, Kelly is taking over an administration struggling with competing factions, disputes, and leaks. Kelly has a reputation for discipline, and he's tasked with bringing order to the West Wing. And there's also another push on health care from the president as he encourages the Senate to come up with a plan, despite its failure to pass an Obamacare repeal bill last week.
You can't promise folks you're going to do something for 7 years and then not do it.
That's why he keeps coming back to this and saying, look, Senate, do your job. Congress, do your job.
Trump's presidency is only 6 months old, but already he's facing a huge list of challenges. And to add to that, there's the whole Russian probe. Now more than ever, he needs Kelly and the rest of his team to help him succeed. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. What do we do with North Korea? One thing we could do, if we launched an atmospheric low-yield nuke right over Pyongyang, we could do to them the same thing an EMP would do to the United States. It would literally fry all of their communications throughout the entire country, and nothing would work. And we could shut them down instantly. But something has got to be done because those nukes are in the hands of a bunch of crazies. It isn't like they're normal people like the Israelis who have got quite a war chest, but they're not using it. But or the Indians. But these people have threatened. They say this is for the U.S. and they're aiming them at us. So it's time to do something. And somebody was suggesting, it was an article in the Wall Street Journal about a regime change. Well, that would be fine, but how do you do it? How do you manufacture a regime change in a dictatorial country like North Korea? We don't know, but the time to act is now, N-O-W, now. Well, with us to talk about the challenges facing the Trump administration, CBN News National Security Correspondent Eric Rosales, and from the White House, political correspondent David Brody. David, Trump wants Senate Republicans to try again on health care. Do you think that's wise, or should they just let that thing go for a while?
Well, look, Pat, the Republicans and, of course, the White House, they're all going to try, and try is in air quotes here, Pat. They're going to try and get something done on health care. But the truth of the matter is that train, at least for now, in the month of August, seems to be leaving the station. There is a top Senate source on Capitol Hill that just told me this morning that there seems to be some momentum for this bill by Lindsey Graham and Dean Heller and Bill Cassidy, all Republicans in the Senate, that in essence would take the taxes from Obamacare. In other words, those taxes would still stay in place, but taking the taxes and the money, the revenue from those taxes would then go to the states to come up with their own health care solution. The White House hasn't said at all whether or not they would support something like that. But the point is that the source tells me that that type of bill is gaining momentum in the Senate and possibly could be up sometime in September after the August recess.
Well, more important right now, it seems like to me, is tax reform. And is the White House going to move on that anytime soon?
Yeah, that's the plan. At least that's the plan internally here at the White House. In other words, they're going to talk, and especially on Twitter, you see a lot from the president about health care, health care, health care. The reality is that behind the scenes here at the White House, tax reform is topmost, uppermost in their minds. Because, look, what sources here at the White House and on Capitol Hill are telling me, Pat, is that tax reform must get done sometime by November. Why? It takes 6 months to 9 months to get that tax reform, whatever it happens to be, in place so the economy can start growing at an even more robust clip. And so I think that's the strategy right now, to get something done by November. It is a heavy lift. Having said that, Pat, there are a lot of in the business community that are on board this time, along with the White House, so it seems like they have their act together more. Jim DeMint, as a matter of fact, was here. He's the former senator from South Carolina, used to be at the Heritage Foundation, and is still a major player here in Washington. He was meeting with senior top White House officials just last week, late last week, about tax reform. So clearly there's a lot of movement here.
There's some real bad blood between Scaramucci, Reince Priebus, who is out. Kelly is in. Kelly is a no-nonsense four-star Marine general. Do you think he can stop these leaks and bring the order to the staff of the White House?
Well, that's the plan. It's kind of like Stratego here at the White House. The general is in charge, and there is a sense within the White House. As a matter of fact, the White House source telling me this morning that he is objective, he being Kelly, is objective-oriented, leadership-oriented, and that's the crucial part of all of this, and that the final words from this White House source is, quote, he will be great. And there is a sense throughout all of the White House that they're looking forward to John Kelly coming in. He runs a tight ship. Remember, this is a man who lost his son in combat. His son, 29 years old, in Afghanistan, stepped on a landmine. And so he knows all about the horrors of war, not just from a family perspective, but he's lived it for over 40 years.
You know, David, I'm concerned about these sanctions against Russia on the strength of the fusion reports that led to a special counsel. We're not really sure what the Russians have done in terms of our voting, but it looks like we're punishing them regardless. Is the special counsel going to be allowed to just keep roaming around and looking for a crime that hadn't yet been committed?
Well, there is no doubt there is concern here at the White House about exactly that, Pat. However, a White House source within the legal team realm here telling me that, look, if the special counsel goes down that road, they will take all appropriate measures to make sure that they do not go there. In other words, into the Trump family finances and all that, because there's no reason for that. That's a rabbit trail the way they see it. So they're going to fight fire with fire if that happens. And, you know, we'll see what happens. But I can tell you this. It's interesting if you connect the dots here. Think about this, Pat. You had James Comey, who was, of course, let go by the president. But James Comey leaked, as he admits, he said he leaked some of this information to get a special prosecutor involved. Well, guess what? That special prosecutor, as you know, Robert Mueller, a friend of James Comey. And then what does Robert Mueller do? Well, he hires a bunch of Clinton attorneys. So there are many conservatives, especially here at the White House, trying to connect the dots and saying, folks, this is kind of a no-brainer. And that's why you hear the president all the time go on Twitter and say this is a political witch hunt.
David, thank you so much. Keep it up. Well, our national security correspondent, Eric Rosales, is with us now from the Washington Bureau. And Eric, North Korea had a successful missile test over 4th of July, then another one this past Friday. Why is this so significant?
Well, you know, Pat, the biggest thing about this is that it actually had a re-entry vehicle on this one. This one actually, when it would hit the atmosphere, and it was the exact size and shape that a nuclear warhead would be on the end of that rocket. So that is what has members of the Pentagon forces so concerned right now. And also, it did travel a lot further, some 2,300 miles high and about 621 miles in the distance. So if you flatten the trajectory, as you mentioned, that could hit cities such as Los Angeles, Denver, and even Chicago.
Well, all right. I mentioned some of the options that are being talked about. The Wall Street Journal had an op-ed about what they could do, but what are the people you're talking to? What are they considering as a response to this?
Well, you know, so many people said a preemptive strike should have taken place like 20 years ago when it was early stages in the nuclear development. But, you know, I did attend a meeting over at the National Press Office where the U.S. General of the Chief of Staff, Mark Milley, actually said that, yes, we are ready, and if we do take a preemptive strike, it would be deadly and catastrophic. So, you know, they're also looking at cybersecurity as well, you know, hitting them with some sort of cyber attack or something like that to be able to knock them out. If anything, what we are going to do is more sanctions with China to try and kind of choke them out, because that is what they actually they rely so much on China for the export to be able to come into the country and keep them surviving there, because so much money is now going to this military and missile development in North Korea.
Well, Eric, you know, there's a vast battery of artillery up to the north of Seoul. Right. And I don't know whether we could do a strike on every one of them, whether we could knock that out. If we start some kind of a war, the thought would that Seoul would be decimated. Have you got has anybody indicated what could be done with that? We have enough Tomahawk missiles maybe to target each one of those artillery pieces?
That's the thing right now, is that he has so many artillery pieces all throughout the country, and so many of them are pointed to Seoul. So as the general mentioned, it would be catastrophic and deadly, not only for them, but also on our side. And, you know, if you think about it, if we start moving out our military troops that we have there in Seoul, that would actually be a tip-off for North Korea. So, you know, right now it's very, very intense situation. Even the general said that is North Korea is the country that keeps them up at night.
Yeah. Eric, thank you very much. Eric Gonzalez, our Defense Department analyst, and we appreciate that. Well, if there's ever a time to pray for our president, it's now, because, you know, Russia has an arsenal of nuclear weapons that is second only to ours, and that they could destroy America. I mean, literally annihilate America, just as we could annihilate them. And so we're in a standoff on that, but you never know. But North Korea acts like they have got nothing to lose, so why not go ahead and bang away? And then you've got Iran over there with their own nuclear program and missile program that is threatening Israel over and over again. They've said they want to wipe Israel off the map. So that's going on. And now if they have guided missiles, you know, if the current Scud missiles, when I was over there in that war, and they were throwing missiles at Israel from North Korea, and they kept missing. They didn't hit the targets. I went up and down there, and they just weren't hitting the target. But if they have these guided missiles that apparently the North Koreans have developed, and they put them to the old-fashioned Scud missiles, which there are plenty of around, and they start aiming at Israel, they can devastate that country very quickly. So now we've got Israel in the crosshairs. We've got United States actually in the crosshairs. It's a very scary world when these huge nuclear weapons are in the hands of madmen. That's why we really need prayer as never before.